Hey everybody, Justin sent some questions about Mod 10, which is about the materials, and I thought they were really good questions. So I'm going to show you how to do some of these things and what to do about them. So I may not go in exact order, but yeah, I think the best thing to use is the Craftsman Style project to do the materials exploration. Um, and the question about how to point those out to you is a pretty simple answer that will help keep track of the kinds of custom materials that you've made in the project. So I will be showing you how to do that as I start making materials. So the first things you're going to want to do is set up a view like this, where you can see your kitchen layout here from a plan view and then also see it in a 3D view, so that you can kind of keep track of how things are happening in both sections. And you can make this view a little bit bigger if you want to, so you can see that a little bit bigger and then see the kitchen view a little bit smaller by just adjusting these tiled views. So how do you make this 3D view is in the first floor view. Just want to make sure that we have gone over this. You can create a camera by going to the camera tool here next to the little doghouse. And I'm just going to create one in an opposite direction here. I'm going to pretend that we're kind of standing in this doorway and we're going to look this way. You want to drag the direction of that camera out pretty far into the beyond the wall, because it's just going to create a better view range for you. So once you get that view created, you can use the navigation wheel over here to orbit around if you're not quite happy with the angle, and I'm just going to kind of shift myself over just a little bit. You can also zoom in and zoom out, and you can also look around. So while we're standing here, I can look around the space and create some different angles. And this is also a good way for you to check to see if things are looking right from all perspectives. And then you can also do a walk around by clicking on walk and then just moving in to the space and turning. We can walk around inside the space, which is kind of cool. Now, if you don't like what you've done and you want to go back to the beginning, you can hit rewind and go all the way back to the first image. And it just keeps showing you how many different images you created from the beginning. So that's a good tool to use for this part of the project. Once you're done, you can use a little X here to get rid of it. I actually did like that position here a little bit better, and I'll pan over there. I think I like that position right there. Okay, so the other thing to do with this to get the image to show up with color is to turn on your either consistent color or realistic. I wouldn't bother with ray trace because it takes a long time to render, and unless you've got like a screaming computer, it's going to be a bit challenging to work with it. So we're going to be using render for these images. So here's an image. Let's see what happens if we go into architecture. I'm sorry, I think it's under manage. Maybe it's under view. There it is. It's under view. Let's use this render tool. And for now, I'm just going to create a draft version of this. And just this should be lighting scheme should be set to interior, sun, and artificial. Eventually, we'll put some lights in here. And it's probably going to be pretty dark, but let's go ahead and hit render and see what happens. And my computer's spinning a little bit here, but there it goes. Yeah, so that's not looking too bad. We got some sunlight streaming in and adding some light into the space. And so you can see just with a simple draft view, it's actually not too bad. But it would improve a lot if we were to add some additional lights in here and stuff like that. So those are the kinds of things we're going to work on in this example. So to get out of here, you just close the render dialog box. It looks like I got an extra window there that I don't want. And, and then you're ready to start applying materials. So we now have two views, 3D view 2 and 3D view 3. It's not a bad idea to name those views. Let's see what we have for 3D view 1, 2. All right, so I don't really need 1 anymore. I'm going to delete that one. And then 3D view 2, I'm going to rename as kitchen 1 and rename kitchen 2. Now I know exactly where those 3D views are in the space. And we'll get rid of kitchen view 2 for now and tile these views. So that's how you set up the two views that you're going to be using to modify the space. All right, so let's get into making some materials. So I'm going to show you some materials I already made, and I'm going to show you how to create a material library that will keep track of the custom materials that you've made. So if you go into Manage and go into the Materials dialog box, I have created down here, and if you're not seeing this area right here, you just need to expand the materials libraries to be able to see it, and you can adjust how much of that materials library you see. You also have show hide library tree. You want to show that so you can see the materials here and then the libraries you're searching through. If you hit the arrow next to the home, it will expand. And the AEC materials are the default materials that come with Revit. So if we hit expand on that, we have them in categories, and you've got materials that show up inside those categories. There's quite a few materials here, but there's always other materials that we can be making. Now, the other thing in mine is I've created a material library called CustomMaterialLibrary, and so I've decided to make a material library specifically for this project. To create a material library, you go to Create New Library, and then browse to a location. I created a custom materials library folder on my computer, and then you want to name the material library. I'll call mine CustomMaterialLibrary 2, okay? And so that material library shows up, and there's nothing in there for materials. Now I'm going to add some materials to it. So you can add materials that are already in your project. So let's say I decide I want stainless steel to be available in that Craftsman Material 2 library. If you right-click on the material, you can add it to the material library of your choice. I'm going to add it to the MATLib 2 library. What's nice about this is any materials I create in here, I can automatically bring into another project by browsing for it. Because I can go and browse or get, open existing library, or remove a library as I go. So in my CustomMaterialLibrary library, the first one I created before recording for you guys, I created two new unique materials. Ship slap interior, which is also in this project. And what I did to create this material is I duplicated, so we go to, let's say, wall materials. You have a default wall. If I right-click and duplicate that material, you can rename it. So let's see, what else we want to put on the walls for finishes. Let's say, let's do a wallpaper. So wallpaper, I don't know, flowers, okay? So I've now created a new material called wallpaper flowers, but when we go into, you always want to turn on use render appearance, because we're going to be creating an image file that will create the pattern for that wallpaper. You go into appearance, the generic material that's in here, you don't want to use, because anything that has that same generic material loaded in it as generic gray will all of a sudden take on whatever pattern you load as a material asset. So one of the first things that you want to do is duplicate that asset and then rename it. So I'm going to rename this flower wallpaper. And then the description we can say is wallpaper with flower pattern. And for keywords, we'll say wallpaper, certainly. Flowers or flower pattern, probably good enough. And then I'm going to leave the color blank for now. And then I'm going to go to my browser and just search for flower pattern wallpaper. And this pick one I like. I'm going to go to images, and so I can find a nice wallpaper that I like. I don't want something too busy. Let's see. This one. I like this one. So once you get an image you like, this pattern is going to be kind of tough because it's got to repeat somehow. So you might have to do some finagling with the image, but yeah, maybe I should pick a different pattern that isn't quite so difficult. This one maybe is going to work. So we can right click and choose Save Image As, and you're going to want to save it into a folder for your image files. So I don't yet have an image files in here. I think I put it under, because I did this for previous semester, so I got a bunch of image files that I put in the project for Mod 10. So I'm just going to rename this Lotus pattern, because it kind of looks like lotuses, and save. So now I should be able to get that image file here by browsing for it. So I'm going to browse for that image, go into my projects folder that I was into, and there's the lotus pattern right there. And the lotus pattern should appear on the example object. Now, if you want to change that example object to something else, like maybe you want to change it to a plane or a canvas or a wall, in fact, it will give you that pattern on the wall to show it to you in that format. If we go into the image, you can control the size of the pattern by controlling the size of the image template. So if I want that pattern to be a lot bigger, I would resize the sample size to, instead of being 1 foot by 1 foot, maybe double it. Let's go 24 inches. And that's just going to make the pattern bigger on the wall. And you can also zoom in on this, I believe. I thought there was a way to zoom in on it. Yeah, that's just showing it in better quality, but it takes a lot. Oh, that's how to do it. That's right. So if you want to see it a lot bigger, that's going to take a little while to render. But it's going to give you a better idea of what the pattern is going to look like. I'm not going to bother with that because it's going to take too long every time. So there, that gives you a good idea of what the pattern is going to look like when you enlarge that image preview. Okay, so I think everything else I wouldn't really do anything else to. I don't think this wallpaper needs a texture or anything like that, so I'm just going to apply that and hit OK. And now I want to add that material to my materials library, the Craftsman MATLib, for instance. I'm going to use the one that I was using before. So I would right click on that and add to Craftsman MATLib. And it still stays in this project, but it also gets added to that one. So if I double click on that and look at what's in there for the Craftsman MATLib, I have now the ship's lap, the standing seam, and the wallpaper. So now we can start applying these things to our objects. So there's a couple of ways to do that. So let me close down this materials library here, and let's say I want this whole wall over here to be the ship slab. So I can paint it by using, under modify, I can hit paint, and then anything that's loaded in this project I can apply that material to. So this goes along with the question for, how do I apply different materials in different rooms? So this is one of the quick ways to do that. I'm looking for the ship slab. So let me type it. Ship slab. Okay. I want to paint that onto this surface space here. And I may have to do this in a 3D view now that I think of it. I think, oh, no, there we go. Okay, so you can see the pattern is showing up there. Now, what if I wanted to have ship slab up to a certain level and then have the gypsum wallboard? You can do something else called splitting the surface, split face, and I can select that surface. And I basically, it's the same kind of thing as an edit edit profile tool, and I may actually have to see this on end, so I'm going to go into let's go into the working 3D view, 3D section while I'm in this mode, and we can see where that pink line is showing up. I want that to extend all the way to the other side of the wall so that it splits that into two separate sections. And don't worry about it covering these windows when you hit the green checkbox. It's going to be fine. So now we have that line that's crossing over all of those things, and it's splitting these into two separate pieces. So I can paint the other surface let's say with the wallpaper. Paint this surface up here with the wallpaper, and now I've got the wallpaper up top and the ship slab down below. That's one of the ways that you can get multiple materials on one surface. And I think Justin was asking, how do I, change the different floor materials per room? That's one of the ways that you can do it. Another way you can change the different floor materials per room is to actually create, let's go into, I hit the wrong button there. Let's go into creating a floor. And I'm going to take one of the floors that systems that's already in here. I'm going to hit edit type, duplicate it, and rename this just tile. So basically I can make a floor system that just consists of the finish alone. So I can bring this finish down and put it inside of the core boundary. And then maybe I want to keep the sheathing there too, and then delete the structure. Or perhaps it's just the finish that I'm adding. So let's delete the structure completely and just have the finish. So if I go into here and grab a tile, let's see if we've got a good tile down here that we can use. Let's just use the ceramic tile. And I apply that material. I now have ceramic tile that I can just apply to any one of the rooms. So I just create a new floor system and put it on top of the floor, and I can create a new finish for each finish that I have in the space. If you do that, though, you have to take your existing floors. I think I might still be in the, let's see, quit sketching. Okay, you have to be in the existing floors and edit them and get rid of, let's duplicate it and just call this wood joist 10 inches with ply. And so I'm going to get rid of that finish on top. And now I could just put that tile floor system on top of the existing subfloor and have it be positioned so it's at the first floor level. So you take this floor system that we just created, and you'd make sure that you drop it down negative 0.75 inches. So it's below the finished floor by this thickness of the actual finished floor. And if I wanted to make all of this area here tile, then I would create a new floor. Make sure I'm using the tile. Where's the tile? Oh, I must have exited out of it. So let's make a new one again. Edit type, duplicate. We'll call that tile. Oops. And I want to bring that down, get rid of these two structures, and bring in the ceramic tile. Should still be there because I already loaded it. Oh, I guess not. Ceramic tile load. Okay, so now I should be able to just use the boundary tools to put the tile in this space. I'm not going to be too perfect about it, just showing proof of concept here. So now that should have that tile, and it should be at that finished floor height of 0 feet 0 inches. So when we look at it, we're not seeing the tile pattern. We want to see the tile pattern. We have to edit the type and edit the ceramic tile pattern. There's no pattern here, so we want to make a pattern that is probably going to be a model pattern of, let's use 12-inch tile. And we also probably need to check to see if the pattern is actually showing up. Do you see how use rendered appearance is not checked? Let's check that. And when we see the appearance here, it's going to be showing you the tile once it has enough time to regenerate. So I'm not going to bother waiting for it. But when we get out of there now, when we look at this rendered view, we're starting to see the tile here. And we can see the faint lines of the tile. And when we hit render, let's go and view render, we should see that new tile pattern in that space, and we'll get a chance to see how that wallpaper in that ship slot looks. It's a good idea to render every now and again because you may need to go in and actually resize the material and see if it's looking like it's the right proportion. Get these things out of the way. Whoops. So this should be interior, sun and artificial. Sorry, I didn't do that. And we'll try rendering again. So this is taking a little bit longer because we have some more sophisticated materials. If I were to render this at a higher draft quality, instead of higher than a draft quality, you would start to see the tile pattern in here, but I'm able to see it a little bit on my screen. All right, I'm going to stop there because that answered some of the questions, and then I will go on and answer a few more. One of the questions that came up was how do you create a ceiling feature in here on the bottom surface of that rafter so that you can apply light fixtures and stuff. So I'll take care of that in the next video.